They say you never really know who you're helping when you stop for a stranger. Sometimes it's just an ordinary person in need, but sometimes someone who could change your life forever. Daniel, a single dad raising his 8-year-old daughter Lily, was no stranger to hard times. Life had dealt him a rough hand working 2 jobs, juggling bills and trying to make sure his little girl never went to bed hungry. Yet despite all his struggles, Daniel carried himself with quiet dignity. He believed that kindness wasn't a luxury, it was a responsibility. One rainy evening, driving home from his late shift at a warehouse, Daniel spotted something unusual on the side of the road. A big motorcycle leaned against the guardrail, its chrome frame gleaming under the streetlights. Next to it stood a man massive, with leather cut-off vests, tattoos winding down his arms, and tears streaming down his face. A biker, crying. Daniel almost kept driving. After all, bikers like that were known for trouble. His instinct screamed to stay away. But then, he remembered Lily's words earlier that day. "Daddy, you always told me to help people when they're sad because maybe nobody else will." So Daniel pulled over. The man barely looked up as Daniel approached, but when he did, his face was a mix of anger and heartbreak. "You don't want to get involved," the biker muttered, his voice low and broken. But Daniel didn't step back. He simply said, "Maybe not. But you look like you could use someone to listen." At first, the biker laughed bitterly, shaking his head. But then, like a dam breaking, the story poured out. His name was Marcus, just hours earlier. His younger brother had been killed in a bar fight, stabbed in the back after trying to break up an argument. Marcus had tried to stay strong, but the weight of it finally crushed him. And here he was, a man feared on the streets, reduced to tears by grief. Daniel didn't try to give advice or talk tough, he just listened. He let Marcus speak, let him cry, let him curse the unfairness of the world. And for that brief moment on the side of a dark road, 2 men from completely different worlds shared something deeply human: pain and the need for understanding. When it was time to leave, Marcus gripped Daniel's hand, his eyes still red. "No, you didn't have to stop. Nobody ever does. But you did. And I won't forget it." Daniel thought it ended their simple act of compassion. He had no idea who Marcus really was. No idea what kind of storm he had just stepped into. And no idea that this one decision would bring the infamous Hell's Angels to his very doorstep. The next morning felt ordinary for Daniel. He woke up to the sound of his daughter Lily humming in the kitchen, trying her best to make toast without burning it. He smiled, knowing she wanted to surprise him with breakfast, even if the bread always came out blackened. But beneath the sweetness of his daughter's smile, Daniel carried a heavy weight. Bills stacked up on the counter. His boss had been on his case about cutting hours. No matter how hard he worked, it felt like the world was determined to keep him down. Still, when Lily handed him that slightly burnt toast and whispered, "I love you, Daddy," it was enough to remind him why he kept going. Later that day, everything began to unravel. At work, Daniel was called into the office. His supervisor, a man who seemed to take pleasure in others' suffering, told him bluntly, "You're done here. You left early last night without permission. We don't need people who don't follow the rules." Daniel tried to explain he hadn't left early. He'd just stopped to help someone on his way home. But his boss didn't care. He shoved a termination notice across the desk and smirked. In that moment, Daniel's heart sank. It wasn't just losing a paycheck. He was losing the roof over his daughter's head, the food on her plate. Panic rose in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm in front of Lily later that evening. She was too young to carry his burdens. That night, after tucking her into bed, Daniel sat at the kitchen table in silence. He thought about the biker he'd helped, the pain in the man's eyes. And for a fleeting second, he wondered had his act of kindness cost him everything? But fate wasn't done with Daniel, because while he sat there, staring at his empty wallet, a low rumble filled the quiet night. At first he thought it was thunder, but it grew louder, closer like a rolling wave of steel and fire. Daniel walked to the window and froze. Headlights pierced the darkness, one after another. Motorcycles, dozens of them, lined his street. Their engines growled like beasts as they surrounded his small, worn-out house. Panic shot through him. He thought about Lily asleep upstairs, vulnerable and innocent. Who were these men? What did they want? Then the leader stepped forward. Leather jacket, tattoos, a grim look carved into his face. It was Marcus, the biker Daniel had helped. But he wasn't alone. Behind him stood men with patches on their backs. Words burned into the leather. Hell's Angels. Daniel's blood ran cold. He hadn't just helped a grieving biker. He'd unknowingly helped a captain of one of the most feared motorcycle clubs in the world. And now, they were standing on his lawn. Daniel's first instinct was fear. His hands trembled as he locked the front door, his mind racing. He had read about men like this in the papers, seen their patches in documentaries. They weren't just bikers. They were legends, dangerous legends. He thought about grabbing Lily and running out the back door, but before he could move, there was a knock-no, more like a thunderous pounding on the door. "Daniel," a deep voice called out. It was Marcus. "I need to talk." Daniel hesitated. Every fiber of his being screamed to stay silent, but something in Marcus's tone wasn't threatening. It wasn't rage. It was respect. With a shaky breath, Daniel opened the door just a crack. Marcus stood there, flanked by riders whose faces were hidden behind shadows and helmets. The air smelled of gasoline and smoke, their presence filling the entire street like a storm. "Relax," Marcus said, holding up his hands. "We're not here to hurt you." Daniel's voice cracked. "Then why are you here? My daughter's inside, please. Just leave us alone." One of the riders let out a low chuckle, but Marcus silenced him with a sharp glance. Then he looked back at Daniel with eyes that carried both sorrow and fire. "You helped me last night when no one else would. You didn't know me. You didn't ask for anything. You just saw a man broken down and you stopped. Do you have any idea what that means in my world?" Daniel shook his head, still clutching the doorframe. Marcus continued, his voice tightening. "I lost my brother a week ago. Everyone turned their back on me because they were scared, or because they thought it wasn't their problem. But you, a man with nothing to gain, showed me kindness." Daniel swallowed hard. I just did what anyone would do." Marcus shook his head firmly. "No, most people look the other way. But you didn't, and now you've got us. All of us." He gestured to the sea of motorcycles behind him. Engines revved, headlights flared. The neighbors peeked through their curtains, their faces pale with fear, as if witnessing the arrival of an army. Daniel could barely process what was happening. His job was gone. His life was crumbling. And now 40 meant 40 Hell's Angels were standing outside his house at midnight, telling him he wasn't alone. Then Marcus dropped the bombshell. "I heard what happened at your job. They fired you for helping me, didn't they?" Daniel's breath caught in his throat. "How? How do you know that?" Marcus smirked faintly. "Word gets around. Besides, I've got friends everywhere." His tone darkened, and for a moment, the fire in his eyes returned. "That boss of yours made a mistake. Thought he could treat you like dirt, but he didn't realize whose debt you're holding." Daniel's heart pounded. "Please, don't do anything stupid. I don't want trouble. Just want to take care of my daughter." Marcus leaned in closer, his voice low but unshakable. "Trouble? No, Daniel. What you've got is protection. You gave me a hand when I was down. Now you've got 40 brothers watching your back." The roar of engines surged as the riders nodded in unison, their presence shaking the ground beneath Daniel's feet. And in that moment, for the first time in months, Daniel didn't feel powerless. The next morning, Daniel barely slept. He woke up with Lily curled in his arms, her small hand resting on his chest, unaware of the storm that had rolled through their quiet street. He kept replaying the night in his head, 40 bikers outside his house, Marcus promising him protection. It felt like a dream or maybe a nightmare. But when Daniel stepped outside, the tire marks etched across the road reminded him it was very real. He tried to carry on as usual, make breakfast, pack Lily's lunch, but the fear lingered. What if the bikers scared the neighbors into calling the cops? What if his boss found out and made things worse? But before he could spiral too far, a familiar rumble echoed down the street. Daniel froze. He looked out the window and saw 2 motorcycles pulling up in front of his house. Marcus was back. Ow. Daniel opened the door cautiously. Marcus grinned beneath his sunglasses. "Relax, brother. I told you, we've got your back. You don't have to live in fear anymore." Daniel sighed. "Marcus, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but you showing up here? It could cause me more problems. My neighbors are already whispering." Marcus tilted his head. "Let them whisper. You think their opinions will put food on the table? No, but loyalty. Brotherhood, that will." Daniel frowned. "And what exactly does that mean?" Marcus leaned against his bike. It means we're going to fix what's been broken, starting with your boss. Daniel's heart skipped. Marcus, whatever you're planning, don't, please. I don't want violence. Marcus smirked, shaking his head. Who said anything about violence? We don't always solve things with fists. Sometimes we solve things with presence. Later that day, Daniel's former workplace at Old Warehouse, where he'd given 10 years of his life, shook with the thunder of motorcycles. Employees peeked from the windows as 40 riders pulled into the lot, engines roaring in unison like a war chant. Marcus led the pack, his cut gleaming in the sun. Daniel, reluctantly, had been brought along, sitting in the back of a truck with Lily, because Marcus wanted him to see. Daniel's old boss, Mr. Reynolds, came storming out of the building, his face red with fury. What the hell is this? You can't just show up here. Marcus dismounted, walked up slowly, and stood nose-tunes with him. The size difference was almost comical, Marcus towering like a wall, Reynolds sweating despite the morning chill. You fired a man for being decent, Marcus said evenly. You're helping someone in need. That man gave you years of loyalty, and you threw him away like garbage. I don't take kindly to that. Reynolds' voice cracked. Hi, he was helping a criminal. Marcus's glare sharpened. Wrong, he was helping me. And you're lucky he did, because if he hadn't, I wouldn't be standing here calm. I'd be standing here angry. The warehouse lot was silent, except for the low hum of idling engines. The other workers watched wide-eyed, some even pulling out their phones to record. Reynolds' face paled. He glanced around, suddenly aware of the dozens of witnesses, the sea of leather vests, the overwhelming presence he couldn't fight. His authority crumbled. You're making a mistake, Reynolds stammered. This is harassment. Marcus smirked. No, this is justice. From now on, Daniel's reputation is protected. You want to smear his name, ruin his future? Think twice. Because when you come after him, you come after all of us. Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't want this war. But seeing the way Reynolds shrank back, powerless for once, stirred something inside him. For the first time, his boss wasn't towering over him. For the first time, Daniel had the upper hand. Marcus leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper, but sharp enough to cut steel. You owe him an apology. Reynolds' jaw trembled. He glanced at Daniel, then at the 40 bikers glaring from their bikes, and swallowed hard. I'm sorry. The words sounded foreign in his mouth. Weak, forced, but they were there. Daniel's eyes widened. His cruel, arrogant boss apologizing to him, it felt unreal. And yet it was just the beginning. As the roar of engines faded into the distance, Daniel sat in stunned silence on the truck's tailgate. Lily leaned against him, her small hand clutched in his. She didn't fully understand what had happened, but she sensed her father's unease. Marcus walked up slowly, removing his sunglasses. You see, respect isn't given, Daniel. It's taken. Your boss will think twice before crossing you again. Daniel nodded, though his stomach churned. Marcus, I didn't ask for this. I didn't want him humiliated like that. I just wanted to work and take care of my daughter. Marcus put a heavy hand on his shoulder. And now you will, 'cause you're family now. The word family sent a chill through Daniel. He wanted to believe it was a blessing, but something about Marcus's tone made it sound more like a contract. That evening, Daniel tried to brush it off. He cooked dinner for Lily mac and cheese with hot dogs. Her favorite tan pretended like life was normal. But when she asked Daddy, are those bikers going to live with us now? He didn't know how to answer. The truth came sooner than expected. Nights later, headlights flared again in front of his house. Not 40 bikes this time, just 3. Marcus and 2 of his men stepped out, their boots crunching gravel. Got a job for you, Marcus said, his voice casual, like he was asking Daniel to borrow sugar. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? A job? Marcus smirked. You've got a good head on your shoulders. You're loyal. We could use a man like you. It's nothing illegal, just keeping an eye on a property, making sure no one messes around. Daniel stiffened, thought about Lily upstairs, sleeping peacefully, about the promise he made to her mother before she passed, to keep their daughter safe no matter what. I don't know, Marcus. I appreciate what you've done, but I can't. I can't be part of this. For the first time, Marcus's smile faded. His eyes hardened, like steel behind smoke. Daniel, we don't abandon our own. You stood up for me when no one else would. That's loyalty. And loyalty goes both ways. The air grew heavy. Daniel felt trapped between gratitude and fear. He knew Marcus was right if it weren't for him. His boss would have destroyed his reputation. But he also knew that aligning with the Hells Angels wasn't just a favor. It was a life-altering decision. Before he could answer, Lily's sleepy voice floated from the doorway. "Daddy, who's there?" Marcus's face softened instantly. He turned to Lily and crouched down, his rough voice gentler. "Just some friends, sweetheart. Don't worry, we'll always look out for your dad." Lily smiled sleepily, then shuffled back inside. Daniel's heart twisted. He couldn't let her grow up in this world of intimidation and leather vests, where safety came at the price of freedom. But as Marcus stood up, clapping him firmly on the back, Daniel realized something terrifying. He wasn't sure he had a choice anymore. The following days were a blur. Daniel went through the motions, dropping Lily at school, cooking meals, searching for jobs, but the shadow of Marcus's words lingered over everything. Every time he glanced out the window, he expected to see motorcycles parked out front. Every time the phone rang, he braced for Marcus's voice on the other end. And then, one evening, it happened. Daniel was folding laundry when the rumble of engines filled the street again. He rushed to the window and froze. Not 3 bikes, not 10, but nearly 20 lined along the curb like a wall of steel. Neighbors peeked through blinds, whispering. Lily pressed her face to the glass, her eyes wide with awe. Marcus stepped forward, his presence larger than life. He didn't bother with small talk. "Daniel, it's time. We're having a sit-down tonight. I want you there." Daniel's stomach dropped. "Marcus, I told you I'm not cut out for this. I can't bring my daughter into your world." Marcus tilted his head, studying him like a predator deciding whether to pounce. Then, his voice dropped low. "You think you have a choice? You help me, Daniel? That means your family. The family doesn't walk away." The words cut deeper than any threat. Daniel realized Marcus wasn't just offering loyalty, he was demanding it. But something inside Daniel shifted. For weeks he'd lived in fear, letting circumstances and powerful men dictate his life. First his boss, now Marcus. And while Marcus had shown him protection, it came at a cost Daniel could no longer ignore. He thought of Lily, her future, the promise he'd made to raise her free, safe, and proud. He took a deep breath, his hands trembling, but his voice steady. "Marcus, I'm grateful for what you did. But I won't let Lily grow up in fear. I won't trade one cage for another. I can't be part of this." The air turned to ice. The other bikers shifted, their expressions unreadable. Marcus's jaw tightened. For a long, unbearable silence, Daniel thought he'd just doomed himself. Then Marcus chuckled a low, unexpected sound that broke the tension. He stepped closer, eyes blazing. "You've got guts, Daniel. Most men would beg. But you stand your ground for her." He glanced toward the window, where Lily's face peeked through. Marcus let out a long breath. "All right. You're not patched in. You don't owe us anything. But know this, we don't forget loyalty. If you ever need us, one call, and we'll come." Relief crashed over Daniel like a wave. His knees nearly buckled, but he held firm. Marcus turned, signaled to his men, and one by one the engines roared to life. The street trembled as they pulled away, leaving only silence in their wake. Daniel stood there in the cool night air, heart pounding, his daughter wrapping her arms around his waist. She whispered, "Daddy, are they gone?" He kissed her forehead, tears burning his eyes. "Yes, baby, they're gone, and we're safe." For the first time in weeks, Daniel felt free. Didn't have money, he didn't have a job. But he had something stronger, courage, and the unshakable bond with his daughter. And that was enough to start again. Stories like Daniel S. remind us that real strength isn't about muscle or intimidation. It's about standing your ground and protecting the ones you love. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful stories, and share it with someone who needs hope today.